Floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ministers, for your service to the country and for being here. Hopefully we'll get some accountability. Minister Freeland, there was some reference to freeing the beer, going between provinces. Really, under this act, there is nothing because if a province like BC and Alberta come up with a bilateral between the two, all it does is, this bill says that you'll just acknowledge it, recognize it, but it doesn't add any value. Is that the case?
I was very careful, Mr. Albus, in my comments, not to overstate the specific contribution this legislation will make to internal trade and labor mobility. As you know very well, the federal government's role in that space is limited. What this is about doing is the federal government doing everything appropriately within our power to contribute to the larger goal of free movement of goods, services, and people across the country. And we need to do this because it's very hard for the federal government to play the appropriate role of convener of provinces and territories if we're not doing our part.
Interprovincial shipping is actually a federal power, Minister. The Canada Post Act, for example, I had a bill C-260 that would actually give Canada Post the authorization to send beer, wine, and spirits. Right now, that can be prohibited by an individual province. That is a federal power. Moving on, it's in the Act here, it also says that you will recognize a designation or a credential from a provincial. At the technical briefing, the bureaucrats that were there, good people, mentioned that surveying, land surveyor, for example, might be. Are there any other jobs that this would apply to, or is this just so niche that it really doesn't do very much?
I've been very clear not to overstate the extent to which the federal government is our problem when it comes to barriers to interprovincial trade, movement of goods, services, and people. The fact is, this is principally a provincial matter. This law is about the federal government doing our part. There are a few specific areas that this legislation removes unilaterally, because what we're saying to the provinces and territories is this is a national effort. And I made a point in my remarks to highlight the excellent work that is being done by provinces and territories right now, because they are leading the charge. We need to salute their work. We as federal MPs collectively have a responsibility to support what they're doing, for the federal government to do our part. And I also want to be very clear. This legislation is very important when it comes to internal trade and labor mobility. It is not the end of the process, and we all have a responsibility to keep going, to support the provinces, to have truly free internal trade.
A previous Liberal Prime Minister used to say the dangers about being the head waiters to the provinces, and it seems that that's all you guys want to talk about is provinces, territories, but national interest, by its definition, has to reign over provincial interest. So, for example, the Prime Minister has said publicly that that premiers have a veto, like David Eby has said he will not support a pipeline to the Pacific, even though it would be in our national interest to get our energy to other markets. Minister, is there a national interest here, or are you only serving up for the provinces?
I am so happy that right now this is a moment of a degree of national unity and consensus around this effort of a kind I have never seen before. That meeting in Saskatoon, a province, as we know, which has a conservative government, was a meeting with more unity around free interprovincial trade and getting major projects built than any meeting of provinces, territories, and the federal government I have been present at. And so, Mr. Albus, I see no benefit and a great deal of harm at this moment when the provinces are all stepping up in the federal government somehow saying, we're going to push you guys around. The fact is, we don't need to. The provinces are doing a great job.
This is why we have a prime minister and a federal cabinet, is to decide what the national interest is. That actually is your job. But besides that, I would just go back. I'd like just to go to
Our
Minister
job
LeBlanc.
in the national interest, in fact, is to work collaboratively with provinces and territories where we can. It's
either a crisis or it's not, Minister.
Honey,
an emergency
honey
or
can be
it's
better
not.
than vinegar sometimes in building consensus.
I would like to
and
see a
right
list.
now, that's what's happening.
I would like to see a
believe
list,
even
Minister,
the
of
conservatives are voting
federal
for this
initiatives
legislation.
coming from my federal
and I'm
government.
happy about
Thank
that
you.
too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albus. And